Morning. I want to talk about an article that I'm going to ask you to read from a book called On Food and Cooking by Howard McGee, which is like on Howard McGee. It's just an incredible book. Fun to read, easy reading, and it's on the history and science of all sorts of different types of foods. And cheap, you can get it online. I'm not going to go through all of this article. I'm just going to point out a couple of the tables and some diagrams that I think are important. There's theoretically 16 pages in here, but a lot of these things are pages that you won't have to read. A lot of them are photographs that you don't really have to look at, so it's not so bad. And as I've read this article, I've underlined things. I think I read this article a couple of years ago, and I've underlined things that were interesting to me. So let me go through, let me go down to a table here. Flour compositions. Obviously, flour comes from wheat. Normally, the type of wheat is Triticum aestivum. That's the genus and species of most wheat flours. There is another genus of wheat called Triticum dorum. The dorum, very hard flours come from. Dorum wheat comes from Triticum dorum. Okay, so Triticum aestivum, Triticum dorum. The flours generally are in three categories. There's the very hard, the semolinas. They come from Triticum dorum. Dorum means hard. Straight hard, which comes from Triticum aestivum, and all-purpose and cake. These come from Triticum aestivum too. So most of these things come from Triticum aestivum. Straight hard, all-purpose, cake, Triticum aestivum. Semolina is the only one that comes from a very different genus and species, Triticum dorum. It's very, very hard. That's semolina. They differ in the amount of protein, and the protein affects the baking characteristics. What I'd like you to know is let's look at these. Semolina from Triticum dorum is pretty high in protein, 12.3%. This is used to make pasta type noodles and things that you don't want to break down easily. It's kind of yellowish in color. It's called semolina from Triticum dorum. It's got a relatively high protein content. Kind of yellowish in color. Used for noodles. You have straight hard, which is generally used for bread. Protein content's a little bit lower. Let's go all the way down to cake. That's the lowest protein content. Cake flour just needs to be kind of soft and crumbly. It doesn't have to be hard and tough, so it's got a lower protein content. And then there's the all-purpose that a lot of you have around the house that is protein content somewhere in the middle, so you can kind of do lots of different things with all-purpose. So semolina, Triticum dorum, and then the others, straight hard, all-purpose, and cake. Just know the relative protein contents of these things, and kind of know that the all-purpose flour is around 10.5% protein. Okay, then everything else is relative to that, either more protein or less. Okay, let's go down to, I want to go way down here. Okay, this is showing you a gluten molecule. Gluten is made up of two different types of proteins, gliadin and glutenin. Gliadin and glutenin kind of combine to make gluten. And they're showing you a molecule of gluten here. And you can see it's all kinked and folded. And these kinks and folds are held in shape by the side groups. Remember we talked about amino acids having an R group, a side group. Okay, and these side groups can form bonds with other side groups within the same molecule or on adjacent molecules. And it forms these little kinky type things that are kind of held into shape. I think these little circles here are either representing just bonds, or they could be representing a special kind of bond, kind of disulfide bond. Disulfide bonds is when you have a sulfur atom here and a sulfur atom here, and they like to form pretty strong bonds. So these could represent disulfide bonds here, and it helps to hold this big folded thing in shape. Okay, so this is a molecule of gluten. Let's go down here. This is on page 294, it looks like. And this is just kind of showing what happens when you mix you mix water with some flour, and you start to knead it. You start to mechanically mix it, either with your hands manually or with a stand mixer. Okay, this is what the gluten molecules kind of look like when you start. They're all kind of tangled up in a mess. And then as you knead it, okay, as you stir it, as you mix it, what happens is these mixed up strands start to align like this. And finally, when you're done, the strands are kind of all aligned in one direction here when you're done the kneading. And this is the goal, to go from this mixed up mess to these gluten strands all kind of aligned like this. Let's go down here a little bit. Okay, this is showing some gluten strands that are kind of aligned. And notice that they are, they're kinked and they're folded a little bit because there's these bonds between the molecules and within the molecules that hold it into these slightly kinky folded shapes. Okay, now as you're kneading or putting stress on these kinky folding shapes that are starting to, these are pretty much lined up, so you've been kneading it for a while. What happens as you put stress on it, you break some of these bonds and you can stretch the dough. Okay, as you put more stress on it, like say you have a roller pin or something like that, and you're stretching out the dough. Some of these bonds up here that hold these kinkly molecules and folded molecules together start to break, and you can stretch the dough. But what happens when you stop stretching the dough, the bonds can reform, and you wind up back where you started, and you get these little kinky folded shape again. And this is kind of interesting. I don't know if you've rolled out dough, and you kind of roll it out and it stretches, and the next thing you know, it's kind of creeping back to where it started from. Two properties of dough. One is the ability to stretch, which is called plasticity. And this is kind of representing plasticity here. You're taking this dough with all these folds and things that are held in shape by the bonds between the molecules, and you're stretching it. This is called plasticity. That's a property of gluten. Okay. The other property of gluten is elasticity. Elasticity is when, after you've stretched it, bonds can reform and it will shrink back to its original shape, and that's called elasticity. Plasticity and elasticity, and that's that perfect balance between plasticity and elasticity in gluten that makes it great for making breads and all sorts of different things. Let's go down to, okay. This is kind of showing, here's a molecule of, here's a molecule of gluten. Here's another molecule of gluten. Here's some bonds between them. Here's another bond there holding this loop into shape. And what can happen is, let's just look at this molecule right here. Okay, that's got this little loopy shape thing here held together by bonds. These might be disulfide bonds, two sulfur atoms holding this loop together. As you stretch it, you can break this. It's plastic, and the dough will stretch if you break that bond. But what can happen is, after you're done stretching, theoretically, that bond can reform, and it'll creep back to where it was. That doesn't always happen. Two things can happen. There's these little molecules in the dough called thiol groups. These are hydrogen and sulfur atoms hooked together. Hydrogen and sulfur atoms hooked together. And this is kind of showing you what's called a thiol group here. What can happen is, if you stretch the dough and this bond here breaks, it might reform. However, if a thiol group comes in here, it can interfere with that bond reforming. So that bond won't reform. That fold won't reform. You'll lose some of the elasticity. So having lots of thiol groups in the dough is not a good thing. Now, thiol groups are naturally present. Aging of the dough helps to get rid of some of the thiol groups. Okay? So that when you do stretch the dough, when you stop stretching it, these bonds can reform. If this is a sulfur bond, disulfide bond here, it can reform. If there's a thiol group that comes in here and interferes, it won't reform. You get rid of the thiol group and it will reform. So you help maintain the elasticity of the dough, and aging helps that. Aging gets rid of some of these thiol groups. Now, the other thing that can happen is if you knead the dough too much, no matter what you do, these bonds aren't going to reform. This little double bond here that holds this little loop in shape, that's not going to reform. So if you over knead the dough, you've lost the ability to reform these bonds. You've lost the ability for to have the elasticity. You'll have plenty of plasticity. You can stretch it, but it won't kind of creep back into its original shape, which is really important in things like bread making. And let's see, this I think is kind of showing here dough breakdown. If you over knead something, you know, here's some dough here and here's some gluten molecules, and you can see that there's a disulfide bond here holding this loop in shape, holding this protein into a folded shape. And what happens is if you stretch the dough too much, this bond can never reform and you lose elasticity. Or if you have a lot of these little thiol groups here, these bonds won't reform and you'll lose the elasticity. And I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of show you some of the pictures in here. I think there was one really great picture nope, let me see where it is. There's a really great picture of some gluten. There's some gluten fibers here starting to form as you start to knead the dough, and you can actually see the fibrous, you can see some of the gluten fibers lining up. Okay, I thought that was kind of a good picture. So that's it for this. I just want to point out some of the tables and some things related to gluten formation, thiol groups, breakdown of gluten, those kind of things. That's it.